The news of the weekend was the Trump declaring tariff wars with Mexico, with Canada, basically saying to Canada, look, you've got problems on your border. We got a lot of terrorists coming through from the Canadian side. You know, there's more. It's like 6 times the amount of terrorists being intercepted, or people on terror watch lists being intercepted from the Canadian side than from the Mexican side, despite the fact that you have like whatever tenfold more.
Oh yeah,
it's
down there it's drugs
wild.
and gangsters and shit. Up north it's terrorists. Because they come in because they like
people on terror watch
I thought you coming from the north and blow shit up.
Well, they're not French terrorists.
Whatever, you know what I mean? But they
we would build.
Well, like Trudeau.
Yeah, you never know. I mean,
so there's a problem. There's also a fentanyl problem, a drug problem in Canada. And although there's only 1% of the fentanyl seized, it comes from the northern border. The majority of the fentanyl comes in from the southern border. The bottom line, Trump comes out and says, Trudeau, fix up your freaking border, or we're going to slap you with 25% tariffs.
Yeah.
Okay. Seems like a reasonable thing, especially since barely 2 months ago, Justin Trudeau was out talking about how there's broken immigration policy in Canada. These students are abusing of student visas. Corporations are abusing of corporate visas to bring in foreigners, use them as cheap labor. And as far as it goes with the student visas, something like 5-6% of them are defaulting on their student visas. They're not going to classes. They're coming from countries like India, China, say like some African nations where, hostile to Western values, defaulting on their visas, and you have a terrorist interception problem at the border. Okay.
Weird.
It's a fix up your shit, or we're going to tariff you.
Yeah.
And what does Trudeau do? Well, Trudeau, who doesn't understand how to negotiate from a position of weakness, who thinks that Canada is on par with America, who thinks that he is on par with Trump, comes out with this beautiful standing strong and standing up for Canada by...
This might give Tim Walz a run for his money. Go ahead, play this video.
Watch this.
Gangster.
Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Who's that going to hurt? Yeah. Moron.
This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains.
Oh, we get
I guarantee he's wearing like a leopard G-string.
But now just also bear in mind.
That's definitely his brand.
100%.
That's what's making him fierce and brave.
That's it. That's why he's tough. Yeah, go ahead.
It was. I put out a tweet the day of, and I say, "You're an idiot. You're gonna buckle." You see, he's like, "We're not gonna bend. You're gonna buckle, just like Colombia buckled, just like Venezuela buckled." A, because it's a problem that you know is the real problem.
Of course.
And B, because you're gonna tariff U.S. goods, and who's that gonna hurt? Like
you guys, not
Canadians. Us. Whether you like it or not, Canadians need the American trade more than the Americans need a 52nd state trade or 51st state trade. So that's the bottom line. We'll get to my tweet later. Said you're gonna buckle. Pierre Poilievre. C'est lui qui est le chef de l'opposition, the opposition party of Canada, the Conservatives. He comes out and decides to play tough ball as well. Yeah. And I say, look, I said at one point, I said, because you understand the political landscape in Canada, Trudeau announces he's resigning after they hold leadership races within the Liberal Party. Yeah. Prorogues Parliament until March 24, where in the time in which the Liberals are going to have their leadership race, and there's no government now. Legislation sessions have been called to an end. It's going to reconvene in March. Pierre Poilievre, who is in theory the lead of the opposition party, comes out and he's playing hardball too. This is Canada first, yada yada yada. And so I just put out an astute observation that all he had to do is come out and say, "A, this is a problem of Justin Trudeau's making. We will work collaboratively with the U.S. because they will, whether they like it or not." And the punchline is, they did, and they will. Yeah. Rob, you look like you want to say something.
No. Sorry, I'm listening.
I know. And he doesn't do it. The reaction from what they call the premiers, or basically the governors of provinces in Canada. You got the prime minister, who's sort of like the president, except he's not elected as an individual. They're elected through the parliamentary system. So like parties get elected, and whichever party gets the most of the riding votes, then their leader becomes the prime minister. The provinces have their governors called premiers. Dumbass Doug Ford. His brother was the one caught on camera smoking crack.
Rob Ford.
Yeah, Rob Ford.
So that was a fun time for us Americans because we got to usually we're the ones that have politicians that are doing dumbass shit.
Yeah, like Marion Barry's watching that. Like, man,
yes, and remember we
got
had Larry Craig who was tapping his foot in the bathroom stalls with other men in the bed, and he's like, "Oh no, I just have a wide stance." But then you guys really topped us because you were like, hey, this guy's going to smoke crack and there's nothing we can do about it. And he was going on TV high on crack cocaine at times.
The dude was a walking Chris Farley impersonation. He comes out, if we can go back to the tweet that Doug Ford Nation comes out with, he comes out and it's like, all right, what's great? We're going to ban Starlink. We're going to cancel our contracts with Elon Musk's Starlink in Ontario. Now, you have to understand the geography of Ontario. It's like, I don't know what it is, like 70% of the Canadian population lives within 90 miles of the American border. Something along those lines.
Yeah, the rest is out in the middle of nowhere.
The rest is out in the boondocks. It's a small part of the population. Canceling the Starlink link, it's going to really, really piss off Elon Musk. He loses one of the biggest provinces. He's going to lose the market for Ontario within the broader market of Canada as a penalty for the tariffs that Trump is imposing. And all that it means is that rural residents of Northern Ontario are not going to get internet anymore. Idiots.
So you punish the people.
He punishes the people.
Not even that many. No. Before we go into this, before he buckles, I want to dig into the psychology of this guy. All right.
Doug Ford or Justin Trudeau?
Justin Trudeau. All right. If you see the last 10 years of Justin Trudeau wearing fine suits, going to dinner with world leaders, sitting like shoulder to shoulder with the American president, they boosted his ego to a level that is dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, come on, he was at the G7, he was at the UN, and this and that. And he was treated, because the left really liked him and the globalists really liked him, he was treated at some other level. Like, it really went to his head. And the same thing is happening with Mexico, and it's happening with the whole BRICS. They got the wrong idea. Like, this is #1 country. You guys are not even a close second, you know?
It's not unpatriotic to say it. You have to negotiate with what you have, and what they don't have is a relationship on par economically, financially, GDP, and geographically, yeah, that's all that they have that can compare between the two. He buckles. First of all, he's a pathological narcissist. And so what Trudeau does is he causes suffering among the people and then says, look what they did to you. I'm your savior now, even though I'm the one bringing on this hardship.
Of course.
Doug Ford, similar thing. It's easier to manage a crisis of your own making if you have a boogeyman to blame it on.
Of course.
And say, oh my goodness, you guys don't have internet anymore because of a decision I made to penalize Trump for asking for something which is entirely reasonable. So reasonable that a day after I say he's going to buckle like Colombia did, like Venezuela did, Justin Trudeau comes out and he's got a tweet here that says, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppas, technology and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl, yada, yada, yada. So after 2 days of blustering, burning relationships with Trump, they buckle and do what they needed to do in the first place. Some people, to steelman the argument, will say, look, it's America's border to protect. If you've got a lot of terrorists coming in, do your job and protect your border.
Yeah.
If they're coming in because of failed policy and failed law enforcement within the vicinity of the border, fine, it's our problem. And the way we're going to deal with it is to punish you, which is the source of the problem. What's the next one? There was another clip or another tweet after this one.
And while she's looking for it, but if you think about it, though, these people are getting to Canada. They're getting Canada's letting them in, and then in turn, our policies from our stupid-ass previous government was letting them in. But Canada has to take the blame as well, right?
Well, for sure, because they're getting into Canada in one of two ways. Justin Trudeau, the pathological narcissist and suicidal empathist, to use, that's not a word, but to use Gad Saad's term, he's like, oh, Trump's coming in, you're welcome here.
Of course.
So they did it. The Roxham border, which was like between Quebec and, I want to say New York or Vermont, I forget which, I think it's New York. They were just crossing into Canada. So Trudeau welcomes in the illegals from America. He brings in adversarial immigrants, temporary foreign students, with wild immigration policy. 97% of the population growth of Canada in Trudeau's regime has been immigration.
That is crazy.
It's
insane.
Socially devastating.
We saw, like, almost 2 years ago now, there was an incident of some kind of Hindu leader, I believe, or Hindu or Sikh, I can't remember which one it was.
It's Sikh, I think.
And he was assassinated outside of a temple by a bunch of radicals who came to Canada to kill this guy because he supported the movement to create the Sikh homeland back in India.
The Khalistani, the Khalistani movement is, and it's a terrorist movement, has infiltrated Canadian government. And you look for links with Jagmeet Singh, who's the head of the NDP.
What a perfect Canadian name there. Every time I see that guy come up, all I can think is jag my meat till
No,
I
no,
sing.
no, it's called jug meat is the way he says it. Like it's like
course,
hug
of
meat. is
course
the way
it
he
is.
said it. That's how you remember his name. The former minister, I don't have it here, the former minister of defense of the Liberal Party, Hajar Sunid, is another Indian guy. At one point, had to acknowledge that they were training Chinese soldiers on Canadian soil for wintertime combat. So you imagine you have. I happen to believe that you should be born in the country, or at the very least, renounce your citizenship. An Indian member of parliament acknowledging they're training Chinese soldiers on Canadian soil for wintertime combat, and you have Trump saying, I don't want your drugs, I don't want your illegals, I don't want your terrorists, fix up your stuff, or we're imposing a tariff, and these dumb jackasses decide to play hardball when they have no balls to play with.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible, but you know what I'm
but it's
getting at. And that was my tweet. I said, yes, Canada will back down. And no, the tariffs are not completely unjustifiable. This was in response to Mélanie Joly, who was the young woman standing behind Trudeau in that video. This is a crisis of their own making because they're killing Canadians at record numbers with medical assistance in dying, euthanasia, mercy killing, like the Nazis used to do it. They're promoting abortion like it's cotton candy, contraception, which is fine. I mean, that's at least you're not killing things. And the population's not growing. And then they say, well, in order to maintain, the system, we got to import the population that's not growing here. Except they then recognize that what they're bringing in by way of immigrants are low-skilled, not contributing to the system, and causing problems internally, overwhelming the healthcare system. And so I don't know whether, they come in for terrorism or whatever. They start making their way to the U.S., and the U.S. says enough is enough. Anyways, bottom line, it was a short-lived tariff war, except they might have to renegotiate NAFTA because it's a one-month reprieve. But Trudeau's an idiot. Pierre Poilievre blew it because he had a great way to deal with it that didn't involve burning bridges with Trump. And the NDP, well, they are
Can we say
useless
he's
scoundrels.
an idiot too? Like I was criticized by a lot of people, behind closed doors, that I never liked that guy.
Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
You'll get criticized because people are going to say he's the only alternative, and he is.
Like,
I mean,
we-
I should
like-
let me rephrase that. He's the only politically viable alternative because Maxime Bernier, PPC, is Canada's Trump. Pierre Poilievre is a fair weather politician, but people say he's the only thing we have.
Listen to me, Viva, and this is happening back home in Chile, and it's happening in a lot of places. So it's better to have a loss and stick to your principles. Like in order to start a political movement, you need to lose at least 10 elections, all right? Because we're talking about cycles, long-term cycles. Settling is the worst thing you can do. You can see the government of England, how they settle for the Conservative Party that made the biggest crisis in immigration ever, all right? If you settle for Poilievre, who is not a conservative, all right? He's not a conservative at all. And he looks like the kingmaker and the guy that's going to save Canada. And you can mark my words now. If he gets elected, he's not going to do anything. Because I know the type of right he is. I know the type of right he is, and he won't do anything.
He's a fair weather politician who will cave depending on political
stand
pressure.
him.
But bottom line, what Canada needs, I mean, the Conservatives are going to win in a landslide in the next election. They need a few actual opposition voices from the People's Party of Canada, the PPC, to bring so-called traditional conservative values back to the Conservative Party. But this is the same Conservative Party unanimously voted on the conversion therapy ban, which was the legislation that says you can't talk trans kids out of being trans.
Yeah.
You can't talk gender fluid kids out of being gender fluid, and you sure as hell can't talk a gay kid out of being gay.
I hate to disagree, but what Canada needs is annexation. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah, but America might not
I
want
think
that.
the
You're just going to
problem
add a Kamala Harris voting base that you
All
might
right,
not want.
Parliamentary systems of government, they're very French. Like, I think the problem is the French overall. Okay, parliamentary system, they suck. Okay, they bring a majority that nobody likes, and you can't predict. Like, if I grab a president and go like, Donald Trump, you're gonna do this, this, and this, he goes like, okay, I'm gonna go do it. But in a parliamentary democracy, like, you can't do those things. You can't have big changes.
Both systems have their problems. The end
And
of
French
the day,
people. You guys need to stop electing French people.
Ah, that's
Since
it.
2006, you elected only French people. You need to get some nice Anglo-Saxon guys there because they're the best at government. I need to say this. They're
Yeah,
the
I
best
mean,
at
you're not-
government.
now that you
lying.
mentioned it, Brian Mulrooney was in there somewhere in between, but
Oh, he's an idiot.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making me hate him even more.
yeah,
I
well, that's
appreciate that.
And the
this
French.
is meanwhile in Canada.
And the
people.
French. I'm not. Yeah. You know what? I wasn't going to croissant
But,
after
by the
this.
way, I don't know what I'm saying. I just
Yeah. I know.
Wait for me to get crucified the next time I go back to Quebec.
No, it's
we
all
saw
good.
what you did, David.
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.